OutDaughtered, Season 9. Blayke Busby talks getting older and entering 7th grade. Growing up happens quietly at first. One day you're holding your child's hand to cross the street, and the next, they're asking for independence you're not sure you're ready to give. In OutDaughtered Season 9, that quiet shift becomes impossible to ignore as Blayke Busby, the oldest child of Adam and Danielle Busby, steps into a brand new chapter of her life entering 7th grade. For fans who have watched the Busby family since the very beginning, Blayke's transition feels deeply personal. She's not just a reality TV kid growing up on screen. She's the big sister who learned responsibility early, the helper who stood out among 5 identical younger siblings, and the child who often balanced being the oldest with wanting to simply be a kid herself. Season 9 places a spotlight on Blayke in a way the show rarely has before, and what it reveals is both heartwarming and bittersweet. Blayke entering middle school isn't just about a new backpack or harder homework. It represents a turning point for the entire Busby family. It marks the end of one era and the beginning of another, filled with new emotions, new challenges, and a growing awareness that time is moving faster than anyone expected. From the moment Blayke begins talking about getting older, there's a noticeable shift in tone. She's thoughtful, more reflective, less playful than in earlier seasons, but not in a sad way. Instead, she shows the early signs of self-awareness that come with adolescence. She understands that 7th grade is different, bigger, more serious, and she knows that expectations both at school and at home are about to change. For Adam and Danielle, this realization hits hard. They've spent years juggling diapers, nap schedules, and endless chaos with the Quintuplets. Blayke often felt like the easy child by comparison, not because she demanded less love, but because she learned how to wait, how to help, and how to adapt. Season 9 quietly acknowledges something many parents experience, but rarely say out loud. When one child grows up faster than the others, their emotional needs can sometimes be overlooked. Blayke entering 7th grade brings those emotions to the surface. She talks openly about being nervous, about wondering where she fits in, about friendships changing and expectations rising. These aren't dramatic confessions. They're soft, honest thoughts shared in a way that feels incredibly real. She isn't afraid, but she isn't fully confident either. She's standing in that in-between space where childhood fades and adolescence slowly begins. What makes Blayke's experience especially unique is her family dynamic. Being the only older sibling in a household of quintuplets means she's always been a little different. She doesn't share their daily routines, their classrooms, or their constant companionship. As she enters 7th grade, that gap grows wider. While the Quints remain in elementary school, Blayke steps into a world that's more independent and less sheltered. Middle school comes with lockers, multiple teachers, social pressures, and the early whispers of adulthood. For Blayke, it also means learning how to define herself outside of being the big sister. Season 9 shows her trying to do exactly that. She talks about wanting more responsibility, but also wanting understanding. She doesn't want to be treated like a little kid anymore, but she still wants reassurance from her parents. This balance is one of the most relatable aspects of her journey. Blayke isn't pushing away her family. She's simply growing into herself. Adam and Danielle's reactions are equally emotional. Danielle, especially, struggles with the idea that her firstborn is growing up. She admits that it feels surreal. Just yesterday, Blayke was starting kindergarten. Now she's talking about middle school schedules and bigger goals. Danielle's emotions reflect what many parents feel but rarely articulate: the grief of letting go mixed with pride in watching your child mature. Adam, on the other hand, approaches the transition with cautious optimism. He encourages Blayke's independence while trying to stay involved. He knows that this stage is critical. He wants to be present without being overbearing, supportive without hovering. It's a delicate line, and Season 9 doesn't pretend it's easy. One of the most powerful themes throughout Blayke's Season 9 storyline is identity. For years, Blayke has been the older sister of the Quints. She's been introduced that way, spoken about that way, and even viewed by fans through that lens. Entering 7th grade gives her a chance to redefine herself, at least a little. She's no longer just the helper at home. She's a student navigating her own world, her own friendships, and her own challenges. Blayke talks about school with a seriousness that surprises even her parents. She understands that expectations are higher. Teachers expect more responsibility. Assignments require more effort. Social interactions become more complex. She's aware that mistakes carry different consequences now. And yet, she doesn't sound overwhelmed. Instead, she sounds curious. She wonders what middle school will be like. She imagines new opportunities. She talks about growing up not as something scary but as something meaningful. That mindset speaks volumes about how she's been raised and about the quiet strength she's developed growing up in a busy household. The presence of the Quintuplets adds another emotional layer. Blayke clearly loves her sisters deeply. She's protective of them, patient with them, and often acts as a role model without even realizing it. But Season 9 hints at a subtle shift. As Blayke grows older, she begins to pull back not out of disinterest, but out of necessity. She needs space to grow. That doesn't mean she loves her sisters any less. It simply means she's learning that her life doesn't have to revolve entirely around them. This realization is healthy, but it comes with complicated feelings. Blayke doesn't say it directly, but it's clear she's learning how to balance family loyalty with personal growth. Danielle notices this change. She talks about how Blayke doesn't need her in the same ways anymore. She doesn't ask for help as often. She handles things on her own. While this makes Danielle proud, it also leaves her feeling a little lost. Parenting a child who needs you less is one of the hardest transitions a parent can face, and Season 9 doesn't shy away from showing that vulnerability. Adam echoes similar feelings. He talks about wanting to stay connected with Blayke, especially as she enters an age where kids often pull away from their parents. He makes a conscious effort to spend one-on-one time with her, recognizing that her needs are different from those of the Quints. These moments may seem small, but they carry significant emotional weight. Blayke entering 7th grade also raises questions about expectations. She's no longer the little helper who tags along. She's expected to set an example, manage her time, and take responsibility for her choices. While she handles these expectations well, Season 9 shows that it isn't always effortless. Blayke has moments of frustration, moments of doubt, and moments where she just wants to relax and be herself. Those moments make her story relatable. She isn't portrayed as perfect or overly mature. She's portrayed as Humana young girl navigating a big transition with honesty and quiet courage. That authenticity is what makes her storyline resonate so strongly with viewers. Another important aspect of Blayke's journey is how she views herself within T family. For years, much of the family's attention naturally centered around the Quints. Medical appointments, school logistics, and daily routines often revolved around managing 5 children the same age. Blayke adapted to that reality early on. But Season 9 subtly asks an important question: what happens when the easy child starts needing attention too? Blayke doesn't demand the spotlight. She doesn't complain. Instead, she expresses herself calmly and thoughtfully. She talks about her feelings in a way that shows emotional maturity beyond her years. And when her parents listen, it creates some of the most touching moments of the season. Blayke entering middle school also brings new conversations about independence. She wants more freedom, more trust, more say in decisions that affect her life. These requests aren't dramatic or rebellious. They're reasonable, and Adam and Danielle respond with care, understanding that trust is built gradually. They don't rush the process. They talk. They listen. They adjust. Season 9 shows that good parenting isn't about having all the answers. It's about being willing to learn alongside your children. Adam and Danielle don't pretend this transition is easy. They admit they're figuring it out as they go. That honesty makes their journey and Blayke feel genuine. Blayke's perspective on growing up is refreshingly grounded. She doesn't talk about wanting to be older for the sake of it. She talks about responsibility, about doing well in school, and about finding her place. She understands that being older comes with challenges, but she doesn't shy away from them. At the same time, she still enjoys being a kid. She laughs with her sisters. She enjoys family time. She hasn't lost her sense of playfulness, it's just evolving. Season 9 captures that balance beautifully, showing that growing up doesn't mean leaving childhood behind entirely. It means carrying pieces of it forward. One of the most emotional undercurrents of Blake's storyline is time. For viewers, it feels like just yesterday that Blayke was a little girl adjusting to life with newborn quintuplets. Now, she's stepping into adolescence. That passage of time is impossible to ignore, and it hits especially hard for longtime fans. Season 9 doesn't rush this realization. It lets it unfold naturally, through conversations, reflections, and quiet moments. There's no dramatic turning point. Instead, there's a series of small realizations that add up to something powerful. Blayke is growing up, and everyone feels it. Her journey into 7th grade symbolizes more than just academic advancement. It represents emotional growth, shifting family dynamics, and the bittersweet reality of watching a child become their own person. For Adam and Danielle, it's a reminder that parenting never stays the same. Just when you think you've figured it out, everything changes again. And for Blayke, it's the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with possibility, uncertainty, and self-discovery. Season 9 of OutDaughtered doesn't just tell Blayke's story. It invites viewers to reflect on their own experiences with growing up, letting go, and embracing change. Whether you're a parent watching your child grow, a sibling adjusting to new family roles, or someone who remembers the uncertainty of middle school, Blayke's journey resonates. In the end, Blayke entering 7th grade isn't about leaving childhood behind. It's about stepping forward with confidence, supported by a family that loves her deeply even as they learn how to love her in new ways. And that's what makes her story one of the most meaningful chapters of OutDaughtered Season 9. As Season 9 continues, Blayke Busby's journey into 7th grade begins to feel less like a single milestone and more like a slow transformation. It's not marked by one big moment or dramatic announcement. Instead, it unfolds through quiet changes: how she speaks, how she carries herself, and how she responds to the world around her. These changes are subtle, but they're impossible to miss once you notice them. Blayke starts to see herself differently. She's no longer just reacting to what's happening around her. She's thinking ahead. She's reflecting. She's forming opinions about who she is and who she wants to become. That internal shift is one of the most powerful aspects of her Season 9 storyline, because it's something many people remember from their own childhoods, even if they can't quite put it into words. Entering 7th grade pushes Blayke into a new level of self-awareness. She becomes more conscious of how others see her. Friendships feel more complicated. Social dynamics carry more weight. While elementary school often feels safe and predictable, middle school introduces uncertainty. Blayke doesn't panic about it, but she doesn't ignore it either. She acknowledges that things are changing and that awareness alone shows how much she's grown. At home, the shift is just as noticeable. Blayke starts spending more time on her own. Not because she's isolating herself, but because she's learning how to enjoy independence. She reads more quietly, thinks more deeply, and chooses her moments of interaction more intentionally. This doesn't mean she's pulling away from her family. It means she's learning who she is outside of constant noise and activity. In a house filled with quintuplets, silence is rare. For years, Blayke's world has been loud, busy, and chaotic. She adapted to that environment naturally, but Season 9 shows that she's beginning to crave moments of calm. This is a normal part of growing up, but for Blayke, it feels especially significant because she's never really had space that was just hers. Her parents notice. Danielle observes that Blayke doesn't seek her out as often for small things. She handles problems independently. She thinks before she speaks. Danielle admits that it sometimes feels like she's watching her daughter slip through her fingers, not because Blayke is going anywhere, but because she's changing faster than Danielle expected. That realization brings mixed emotions. There's pride, of course. Blayke is thoughtful, responsible, and emotionally mature. But there's also sadness. Danielle remembers when Blayke needed her for everything. When bedtime stories mattered more than schedules. When problems were simple and easily fixed with reassurance. Now, Blayke's challenges are more complex. Adam experiences this change differently. He sees Blayke's growth as an opportunity. He wants to support her independence while staying connected. He understands that middle school can be a turning point. Kids begin to form identities separate from their families, and the way parents respond during this time can shape relationships for years to come. Adam makes a point to talk with Blake, not at her, but with her. He listens more than he lectures. He asks questions without pushing for answers. This approach allows Blake to open up naturally. She talks about school expectations, about feeling older, and about how sometimes she doesn't know exactly what she's feeling, but she knows it's different than before. That honesty becomes a recurring theme. Blake doesn't pretend to have everything figured out. She doesn't act overly confident or dramatic. Instead, she expresses uncertainty in a calm, grounded way. She understands that growing up isn't about having answers, it's about learning how to ask the right questions. One of the most meaningful aspects of Blake's Season 9 storyline is how she navigates responsibility. As the oldest child, responsibility has always been part of her life. But now, it feels heavier. She's expected to manage schoolwork more independently. She's expected to set a good example. She's expected to act maturely even when she doesn't feel fully grown. Blake handles this pressure quietly. She doesn't complain, but she does reflect. She recognizes that being older comes with expectations, and she wants to meet them not to impress anyone, but because she cares. That sense of accountability isn't forced on her. It's something she's developed naturally through years of observing her parents and helping her sisters. Still, Season 9 makes it clear that responsibility isn't always easy. There are moments when Blake seems tired not physically, but emotionally. Moments when she just wants to relax without being the oldest. These moments aren't framed as complaints. They're framed as honest glimpses into what it feels like to grow up before you're fully ready. The Quintuplets remain a central part of Blake's life, but their relationship evolves. She's still loving and protective, but she doesn't hover as much. She allows them to handle things on their own. This shift isn't intentional, it's instinctive. As Blake grows, she naturally steps back, giving her sisters room to grow too. This change is healthy, but it's not without emotion. There's a quiet sadness in realizing that the closeness of early childhood doesn't stay the same forever. But there's also hope. Blake's bond with her sisters doesn't weaken, it matures. It becomes less about constant presence and more about mutual respect. Season 9 captures this evolution beautifully. Blake doesn't lose her connection to her family. She simply adds new layers to it. She learns how to be both a daughter and an individual, a sister and her own person, a child and someone beginning to understand adulthood. School plays a major role in this transformation. Entering 7th grade exposes Blake to new expectations not just academically, but socially. She becomes more aware of how words matter, how actions are perceived, and how choices have consequences. These realizations don't overwhelm her, but they do make her more thoughtful. She becomes more selective with her energy. She understands that not every moment needs a reaction. Not every feeling needs to be shared immediately. This emotional regulation is subtle, but it speaks volumes about her maturity. Blake is learning something many adults still struggle with: how to sit with uncertainty without letting it control you. Her parents recognize this growth. They talk about how Blake surprises them not with big gestures, but with small moments of insight. A thoughtful comment, a mature response, a quiet decision that shows self-awareness. These moments remind Adam and Danielle that their daughter is no longer just growing physically, she's growing emotionally too. That realization changes how they parent her. They give her more space, more trust, more voice in decisions. This shift isn't easy for them, but they understand it's necessary. Holding on too tightly would only push her away. Letting go gradually allows their relationship to evolve. Season 9 shows this evolution without forcing it. There are no dramatic confrontations, no exaggerated conflicts, just honest conversations and emotional adjustments. That realism is what makes Blake's story resonate so deeply. It feels true not just to the Busby family, but to anyone who's experienced change within a close-knit household. As the season moves toward its conclusion, Blake seems more comfortable with who she's becoming. She's still learning, still questioning, still growing, but she's no longer unsure of her place. She understands that it's okay to change, that growing up doesn't mean losing yourself. It means discovering new parts of who you are. That understanding is powerful. Blayke entering 7th grade isn't framed as the end of childhood, it's framed as a continuation of it. Childhood doesn't disappear overnight. It stretches, shifts, and transforms. Blayke carries pieces of her younger self with her, even as she steps into something new. For viewers, this journey feels personal. Many people see themselves in Blayke, whether they were once the oldest sibling, the quiet kid, or the child who grew up surrounded by responsibility. Her story reminds us that growth doesn't have to be loud to be meaningful. In the final moments of her Season 9 arc, Blayke stands at the edge of something new. She's not rushing forward, and she's not holding back. She's moving at her own pace, supported by a family that's learning how to support her differently. That balance between independence and connection is what defines her journey. OutDaughtered Season 9 doesn't just show Blayke getting older.